All rise for the pledge.
That's the
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez.
Present.
Councilman Cypress.
Here.
Councilman Larka, absent. Councilman O'Connor.
Present.
Supervisor Hay.
Here. Notation of the exits in the front and the rear and electronic devices, please put them on vibrate. First item on the agenda this evening is a presentation by Nicole White for the Peach Lake Brook, and she represents Little Bear Survey Reports. Thank you. Let her finish her presentation if you don't mind, and then she'll answer questions after that time.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So thanks so much for having me. My name is Nicole White. I'm the owner of Little Bear Environmental. I named it after my son. His name is Teddy. If I could do it again, I would have chosen a shorter name. I'm a certified lake manager. I have 20 years of experience in the field, and right now I'm on the board of directors for North American Lake Management Society. I'm director of Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. So I was selected to do some work on Peach Lake Brook, including a vegetation survey. So as some background information, Peach Lake Brook contains a mix of native and invasive aquatic plant species, and a lot of that vegetation is impeding the flows between Peach Lake and East Branch Reservoir. Peach Lake Brook is a canal that connects those two water bodies. My company, Little Bear Environmental, was contracted to complete an aquatic vegetation survey to assess the plant abundance within Peach Lake Brook in May 2023. And this presentation will summarize the data that was contained in a survey report that I submitted on June 5th. So there's a lot more information if you're interested in that report, but this is just a summary of some of that information. So to summarize, Peach Lake Brook is densely vegetated with a mix of native and non-native aquatic plant species, and those plants are impeding flows in some areas. There are significant areas where sediment and detritus, plant material that's breaking down, where all of that material is deposited in certain locations, and I'll show you some of those locations. There's a proposed project for maintenance, removal of above ground aquatic vegetation through the brook in a 10-foot swath. And it was my job to go through and kind of assess the vegetation and see if that strategy looks like it would be effective to move water more easily through the brook. And so based on my findings, yes, removing aquatic vegetation and root material, that proposal will be really effective at moving water more easily through Peach Lake Brook. There's one plant that's a little bit uncertain whether or not it will completely be controlled just because of the plant phenology or its life cycle, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And as I said, a 10-foot swath is what the proposal was. So as I was going, that's my goal, is to envision the 10-foot swath and take a look at the vegetation within there and then compare it to what's going on in the rest of the ecosystem. So really quickly, we have to understand the types of plants. So there are emergent species that we looked at and emerge out of the water. There are floating species which float on the surface of the water, and there are submerged species which either grow on the bottom of the brook or take up space in the water column. So how are those plants impeding flow? Well, the plant growth is in dense or nuisance abundance. So both native and non-native plants can reach nuisance densities. And nuisance densities occur when more than 45% of the water column, like all of the water in the channel, is vegetated, or more than 45% of that 10-foot wide swath is encroached with vegetation. So it could be emergent or floating vegetation. Plants grow where their limiting nutrients are available. So for plants, you need phosphorus and nitrogen. And we know that nutrients are readily available in the brook. Lots and lots of plants grow, and algae grows as well. And that grows because succession is a natural ecological process. So that canal was dug, there was a kind of wide open swath, and over time, If we go back to biology, succession means that sediments accumulate on the bottom of the brook, and that gives a place for plants to root. So it also provides nutrients for plants. So you see an increase in floating and submerged plants over time, and as more material continues to be deposited at the bottom, you get more emergent plants, those plants kind of growing on the side of the brook and then moving inward. So you get facultative and kind of wetland species first, and then you get grasses followed by shrubs and woody trees. So that's a natural process, particularly for a man-made canal, which is relatively shallow to begin with and not very wide. So over time, you'll continue to see growth kind of creep in. It's been quite a while. But with careful consideration, management activities can be designed so that you don't have significant impacts to surrounding ecosystems, but you are maintaining that channel for its function it was designed for. So what does dense abundance look like? Well, these are some photos from the brook. This is what floating plants look like in dense abundance. It's more than 45% of the surface of the water is covered. Emergent plants are here, right? They're emerging from the water. So this is what emergent plants look like in dense abundance. And this is submerged plants. So this is a plant called curly leaf pondweed. It's an invasive plant that's found in the brook. And it has these super dense kind of mats. Think about like hair clogged in a drain. That's really how it was. It filled the entire water column. It was very hard to move through. So floating and emergent plants, you can kind of assess visually, like where they are on the surface of the water. But submerged aquatic plants, you don't typically assess that visually. If you want the math behind it, you need to use an aquatic rake toss survey. So that's what we did to get data for submerged plants. So this is what abundance looks like. This is trace abundance of a submerged plants. This is sparse abundance, medium abundance, and dense abundance. So if we look at the data from the survey, we can see that 42 points were sampled, and 33 of them had dense abundance of plants in the brook. This is the data. All of the red are dense sites, so you can see for each species, which ones were dense or moderate, and then the total overall density of those combined. So 4 were moderate, none were sparse, 3 were trace, and only 1 of the sites had no plants. Was pretty clear. There were 19 species found, and 6 were non-native. So if you look at this pie chart, the overall abundance, 83% of the sites were densely vegetated. So we said both native and invasive plant growth was a cause, and it's not just the plants that are growing that year. It's not just the green stuff. It's this material that is like root systems, these big fleshy rhizomes, things like that really don't decay very quickly. So each growing season, you get all this like root material, and then it just stays waterlogged and doesn't break down easily. So all that material is kind of building up over time. And we talked about, some of those facultative species, wetland species, they can kind of grow on top of this material. They don't like to get their feet as wet as truly aquatic plants, but they, will grow where they can. So in a lot of places throughout the brook, you see this material kind of deposited from previous years, and then all those plants that don't really like to get their feet wet are just growing on top of it. And then finally, all that vegetation, all those root systems, what they do is they stall the flows that are moving through. So higher velocity can transport more material, sediments that are suspended in the water column, as well as detritus, things that are breaking down. All of that is being carried from the lake through the brook and then to the reservoir. But when flows get stalled, that material is allowed to settle out. And so that's happened at various points. When it hits a slow spot, that material settles out and it just becomes deposited. And you see these big layers of sediment and detritus at various points. So we also took depth data. We did depth of the water, which is the blue on this graph, and then sediment depth below it. So that shows like very soft sediments or root pack, detritus, things like that. So I took data and provided it to Brad, and he made this nice bar graph, which is really helpful to see. So I just wanted to talk talk about some of those pinch points, the places where that material is really depositing. The first is right at the start. So we have our start point, and you can see the water is more than 3 feet deep at that point. That's a start point. There's a lot of vegetation there. The water's deep, but it's not moving very quickly through this area. And by the time you hit site 0, which is actually the next site, the depth of the water has flip-flopped with the sediment depth. So a lot of material has been deposited right there. It's only 1.5 feet deep. So it's kind of a place where it hit all that vegetation, slowed down, and a bunch of sediment was dropped. So that's a place right at the mouth of Peach Lake Brook as you're moving into the brook that we probably should survey a little bit more, get some more data on, exactly where the sediment is and how much of it is just root systems of these plants. Then we can look at site 8 and 9. So site 8 is relatively shallow. It's like just over a foot in depth. And what we see here, like in between site 8 and 9, is this invasive reed canary grass. So once we get very shallow, it's this kind of facultative species that moves in and can really colonize the whole brook. So this doesn't look like a brook. This looks like a field full of grass. But there's a little bit of water under that, and that's the kind of density that we're talking about in some of these pinch points. Between site 12 and 13 is another pinch point. There's this large woody debris submerged, and there are places like this noted in the report throughout. Anywhere I found large woody debris kind of across the path, I noted it. And then we have this curly leaf pondweed once again has come back. It's this super dense, mats that take up like a good length throughout some of these sites. And so this pondweed is like really slowing the water there. It was very difficult to boat through, and you can see it's just like a floating mat. So if we take a look at site 13, that was our shallowest site. And we have root pack kind of underneath that. So it's like these really dense root systems that are made by these plants. Phragmites is in there. That's another invasive plant. But they have these really thick rhizomes. So when you get that root material, that's something that's part of the proposed removal would be the plants along, when you pull them out, they come out with their root material. So that's an area where you would see, a good amount of increase in flow. And right now it's very, very shallow. It's the most shallow section. So this is a list of the aquatic plant species that were present. The red are the non-native or invasive, and this is all in the report. All of them are kind of profiled, a little bit of information about them. The curly leaf pondweed is problematic because it's an early growing species. So it grows first before anything else in the brook, and that's why it was reaching those really dense, that really dense biomass by the time I was there in May. So one issue with the proposed treatment is that vegetation removal is scheduled to occur kind of late season in early fall. So by then, this plant has died back, and it just depends how that removal takes place, whether or not it gets the reproductive structures of this plant, because the plant itself will have died back. So there's a chance that this will return and continue to, be really thickly growing in the spring, and then there are other vegetation removal control strategies for that, including use of aquatic approved herbicide for that species that work really well. Giant reed, Phragmites, this I'm sure you've seen, is very common in the brook. Reed canary grass is very common in the brook, and that's what made it look like that field. And spatterdock is a native plant, but it's growing in nuisance densities, and it also has these rhizomes, which, like I said, deposit over time and just really make it difficult to pass water or sediment or debris through the channel. And then duckweed is a native, and it's a very tiny, unrooted, floating plant. It just floats along in the water current. But I mention it because we can use it as an indicator. In these areas in the brook, you can see there's no current at all. It's not flowing, it's just completely stalled out. And it's those places, the duckweed is showing us there's no water movement here, and under those areas is where there's a lot of sediment buildup. There's also benthic filamentous algae. It's native, it's harmless, but I just wanted to point it out because people have a lot of questions about algae, especially in this day and age when there's a lot of harmful algal blooms. Benthic filamentous algae is not toxin producing. It's not, associated with HABs, but HABs are a hot topic right now. So I just wanted to note that there is various kinds of algae in the brook and certainly in the lake as well. So the recommendations to finish up, while I was there to assess plants, but I also just kept an eye and ear out for wildlife as well. And 3 species of frogs were present, either heard or seen. So we wanted to make sure that the proposed vegetation removal wouldn't impact those species. And so, taking into account which species were present, they will be done breeding by that time. So their eggs are really what's most vulnerable to vegetation removal in the brook. And so by the time that vegetation removal occurs, there'll be, developed froglets or adults that can just jump out of the 10-foot swath. So likely there's no, risk posed by that. Same thing, red-winged blackbirds were seen nesting. There's a good picture in the report. And so they nest from May to mid-July. So once again, the later season vegetation removal likely does not pose a risk to them. They're fledgling birds or they're adults by then, and they can just move out of the swath area. And a final note that an additional aquatic plant survey would be helpful for August because it would give us an idea of exactly how much material needs to be removed. So when the contractor goes in with the equipment, they know a better idea of how much time it's going to take and budget and things like that. I mentioned the curly leaf pondweed already. If that continues to pop up next spring following the treatment, that's something that probably needs to be either harvested again in the spring, which you probably don't want to do to avoid impacts to wildlife. So a simple chemical control is probably the way to go. And I will take any questions.
And would you like to come up and stand close to the mic so we can hear, everyone in the audience can hear you, please? Yeah, good. Right to the mic and speak into it. We all can hear you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your presentation. Can you hear?
Name for the record as well.
Oh, my name is Patricia Kravitz. I'm with Putnam County Land Trust. And I just read over your survey just briefly, and I just had a few questions. And I'm sure we would love it if you would be able to speak with the trustees at a later time. But these were just some of the questions that I did have. So you're definitely sure that lowering, cutting this dredge will lower the water level so that it's not in imposition on the flooding? So
it's not dredging.
And you have to come a little bit closer if you have to share.
So it's not dredging that's being proposed from what I understand. It's vegetation removal. So it's the above ground vegetation and then the root systems that come along with it. So from what I saw based on like the root path that's in there and the amount and the density of vegetation, yes, the water will move much more easily through the channel.
And do you know how much it will lower the water level for the residents?
No, and I think that completely depends on rainfall and things like that.
Okay, so there's no guarantee that it will actually lower it?
I mean, if you have, let's say you have some, gangbusters flood year, I can't say that, it will be lower than it's ever been in the pond, but what I can say is that the channel will be more effective. You'll be able to move more material through at higher velocity.
Okay. The next question I had, I know that you had mentioned that there's a 10-foot width. Is it 10 feet the entire way, or I read in some parts that maybe a tree or some, would you be cutting any of the trees or the bushes, or are you going to stay completely within the brook even if it's not 10 feet wide?
So I'll just say I'm not doing that work. I was just doing the survey portion of this. But the proposal that I read was a 10-foot swath, and in my report I highlighted, there's a mature red maple tree here. The swath has to move to the left into the invasive reed canary grass. So that's the kind of the level that of detail that I kept there. So cutting trees was not part of the proposal. They're not planning to do that.
Okay. I know that you had mentioned a couple of the wildlife. Do you think that it would be important to get an assessment of the wildlife that's there and the impact that it would be? I know that you mentioned, I don't know if frogs can just jump out of the way. I don't know how they actually work, but or also if there's other, wildlife that may be impacted.
Yeah, so the way that I was kind of thinking about it was assessing how much of the same habitat occurs on each side of that swath. So if there's place for those species to move into, they will. And so that's kind of how I thought about it. I don't think, there might be some areas where it will be less than 10, but I think the machine itself is about 10 feet, like that's the swath that it clears. For that proposal, there's other permitting that needs to happen associated with that project. So, that's a DEC regulated project, and wildlife certainly looks at that and would raise flags if, for example, there's like some concern about a specific species. And that's something that if you do have like a specific, even a taxa, like who are you concerned about? It would be helpful, because you can't survey for everything at once. You have to decide, kind of like what even a taxonomic group, what you want to survey for, so that you know what protocol to use to survey.
But you said that the DEC would definitely do a study of what is there and what would be impacted.
So DEC reviews the permit, the application as it's written.
Okay.
So I can't say whether or not they would send someone out to do a specific study, but they would, if there's red flags, potentially they would, but they review it, so they would be able to say that.
Okay, and you feel that that would be an important aspect, to review the wildlife?
Well, that's part of their permit process. They do
Okay.
that.
And just a couple more questions and then I'll be done. When you say, I'm all for cutting the invasives and keeping the natives if you can, is there a way you can like spot clear or remove where it's like the most, clogged area?
Yeah, so if you're trying to maintain the channel, the idea is to have one channel and then you still have the species growing on either side of it. So what I tried to include in the report was based on like how abundant those species are in the lake itself and in the surrounding area, is it going to impact the population as a whole, for example? And I didn't see any place where any of the species that I found would be impacted as a population. They're all abundant enough that it's not going to have an impact.
Okay, and the last question, the herbicide that you had mentioned about using, if you could maybe just go into that a little bit more, and if it's going to be applied in the spring when maybe there's more vulnerable populations of, frogs when they have their young, would that affect the amphibians to a greater extent?
Yeah, so to be clear about the herbicide, there isn't actually a proposal for that yet. I'm mentioning it because it's a management tool, it's an option. No one's really discussed that yet or made a proposal for it. But the herbicide that I mentioned is one of only 3 aquatic approved herbicides that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency classifies as a reduced risk herbicide. So it's something that's used widely. It doesn't impact other taxa other than plants, and it's used by many agencies, including DEP, so that's not an issue with the water that is going to go downstream into the drinking water supply. They use it on their property, so it's a reduced risk aquatic herbicide. So it's a good option if that's the choice that the group makes, but there's no proposal to use it at this time.
Okay, I just noticed that it was at many spots where you had mentioned, not just like 1 or 2, it was at like over 20 locations that you had mentioned to use the herbicide, so it just seemed like that was...
Yeah.
And you said it doesn't affect the water quality?
No, I mean, it's a systemic herbicide. It works slowly over time, so you don't see like big die-offs or anything. It's specific to plants, so there's no risk to fish. There's no water use restrictions for like recreation or drinking water or anything like that. So, it's widely used in that regard.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next, please. One question I do have is the entire, I didn't hear anything that the public may want to read. They haven't read the report. The depth and the length, well, the depth varies, okay? How about the length from outlet to the culvert? I think it's 3,300 feet?
I think we said 4,000,
Four-
and we put 42 points in, trying to do every 100 feet.
And it's a long way to go with a very small pitch. So what's the average pitch between high to low from the outlet about?
I did not do slope. I do not know the slope.
I think it's about 2 feet
2 feet.
is the generally accepted. So from the lake, over 4,000 feet, it drops about 2 feet. That was from the Jacobson,
I know it. I want the public to kind of have an idea that it's a long way to go in a very small pitch.
right.
No matter what you do, it's not going to flow like people would think a normal channel would work.
I mean, I can't speak to the engineering of the canal, but I can speak to the fact that there's a lot of plant material and root material and soft sediment that's been deposited that when removed, there are places where the water flows well. And so I think you would see more of that, you know, just based on the vegetation survey.
And that Cobb Road at the culvert is the best, basically the best area for it to flow. You
Yeah,
can
I
watch it,
mean-
it moves pretty well, but in the internal, it hardly moves at all.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few sections where there were good flows, and so I would note that in the report. Like
Okay.
between this point and this point, the water was flowing well. You know, you would see vegetation carried in the current.
Good.
Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. You brought out a crowd tonight for us, so this is good. This has been going on for quite some time. We'd like to thank Putnam County for arranging some financing with the ARPA money that is providing this to happen. Now, the only thing that has to be realized by the people in that area, what's happening in Southeast is not the cause of the problem, okay? It's a part of the problem. It is not the town of Southeast's responsibility. So at some point in time, both sides, our side here, we have to have someone or something that's going to maintain this. The money that you got was $150,000, and this was very well spent. She did a really good presentation, and it was a very little bit of money, and we learned an awful lot. Now, it's the tougher part of getting it done. So in the future, once this money runs out, the people in that district are going to have to do something to keep it going. It's not a one-shot deal. It's like mowing your lawn. If it doesn't rain, it grows a little bit, and then once it rains, which is a lot, you're going to have a problem in the future. So just keep in mind that this is only round one, but the maintenance in the future is going to be the most important after this is done. Anyone else like to speak to any of us? Brad? And by the way, Brad, I have to give you the credit the most because you have taken the bull by the horns, given me half the stuff, I don't even know what the names are. I have to go get a dictionary and look it up.
Do you want to move this back over there?
Yeah, we could, yes.
Oh.
And Brad's done a tremendous amount of work. What's your profession?
I'm retired.
I know, but that doesn't.
Good
Tell-
profession.
I'm trying to be retired.
Well, they're not allowed, and again, and Scott, you're here as well. You guys been carrying the ball for a year. Many, many phone calls between us, and thank you for your help.
I just wanted to say that Scott and Gerard, who are here tonight, at the end of April, they went through close to 3,000 feet of the brook and removed a whole bunch of fallen trees. And that was done primarily so Nicole could get through in the canoe. But there has been, since that time, a noticeable increase in the flow. It was surprising, but the flow has increased noticeably just from removing those trees. So I fully expect that if the dense plant growth is removed, that's going to increase the flow also.
And Gerard, raise your hand. Okay, just so everyone knows who it is. I've been dealing just with those two mostly for quite a while. Any other comments on this issue? Well, on that part, thank you. We're going to continue to move on with the meeting, and you're welcome to stay. We have lots of good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll move into the regular, there's nothing on the work session this evening. I'd like to move into the regular portion of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Waive the reading of the correspondence?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the voucher list. Michelle, can I have yours for a second? I wrote it down, I left it on a piece of paper. Approval of the voucher list, $878,874.25. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Setting the meeting dates. Waive the reading of the budget transfers. Second then?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 4, setting of meeting dates and public hearings. All meetings be held at 1360 Route 22, Brewster, New York, at 7 p.m. unless otherwise noted. July 13th, 2023, Thursday, July 27th, 2023. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now pertaining to what we just had an introduction with, resolution to authorize Star Ridge Manor Civic Association, SRMCA, to expend ARPA funding awarded by Putnam County for the Peach Lake Brook project. Now therefore it be resolved that in accordance with the Resolution 31 of 2023, SMRCA SRMCA is hereby authorized to spend $100 for a New York City DEP permit application, $35 for placement of a legal notice in the official newspaper of the town of Southeast, $1,831.13 for mapping and survey of Peach Lake Brook, $280.37 towards reimbursement for expenses in connection with the presentation this evening, as well as authorization to expend $4,753.50 for an ecological survey of Peach Lake Brook to be conducted in August and September of 2023, and consultation and management and nuisance of invasive plants affecting Peach Lake Brook, and be further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6, resolution set performance bond for erosion and sediment control for 251 Fields Lane. Now therefore it be resolved that the bond amount shall be established for the project set forth below. Project name, 251 Fields Lane site plan, site improvements, $1,183,000. And erosion and sediment control, $20,100. And be further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be transmitted by the town clerk to the planning board secretary and building inspector forthwith. So moved for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 7, resolution to approve the NIMA for Brewster Central School District and the town of Southeast for a swim and learn program. Now therefore it be resolved that the town of Southeast is authorized to finalize and execute an intermunicipal agreement in form and substance as annexed hereto as Exhibit A, intermunicipal agreement, in order to effectuate sharing of services and resources as set forth herein above, and be further resolved that all action here, I wish I could do this in English, but heretofore, taken by the supervisor in connection with this initiative and hereby ratified, confirmed and approved non pro tum, and be further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I would like to thank the school and our recreation department for their participation in working in unison with the town.
Here, here.
Okay, budget report. We're getting close to halfway through the year. The finances, everything is in order. There's nothing that stands out. Of course, the taxes coming in from, property sales is dwindling big time. But also, when I budgeted, I kind of figured it was going to be a one-time event, so we're in good shape.
Good.
And other than that, I mean, everything's running, all the departments are within their whatever. Rec department is, I think, spending money very wisely. You've seen Town Park and everything that's going along. Money-wise, we're in good shape at the moment, and hopefully the future.
Excellent.
Anyone have a comment?
Was up at the baseball fields in Zimmer, and it looked really good.
Yeah, well,
pads are poured, and everything looked terrific. So.
They're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things, we were up there today, Mike Burdick and myself, we were looking at, we're still fixing up where the Castle Park entranceway is. There's areas in there, pickleball or handball court, they're working on that. So hopefully by the end of September, everything will be pretty much up to date. And it's looking better every day.
Excellent.
So, and public seems to be enjoying it. I asked Kathy to send some pictures someone took up there to something happened last week there, and they had something from the school or something.
She sent it earlier.
Did-
Yeah, they look-
Today?
Yep, I got it anyway.
Well, I've been too busy today.
I did. Yep.
Okay, but it looked good, and still,
Yeah, it looked
Hopefully-
like they had fun.
yep, they did. Okay, next is a resolution. Set public hearing for map planner report for Birch Hill Highview Water District, Thursday, July 27th at 2023 PM. And that's attached as number 9. Is there a second?
Second.
Now, as you know, this has been out there for a while, and it's moved along really rapidly at this point in time. And once we get this part done, it'll move along much faster. And
This part is just officially making it a district with those additional parcels, right?
well, not all the parcels.
Right,
They're
right.
not, at one point in time, I think there was 18 original from the original owner, and we found 6 others during that event. Okay, so, what is it, Highview? At the end of Highview, there were 6 on a private water source, which we didn't find out until they did the study. So there's a total of 24.
Right, and everybody will be on one, and it'll
Yes.
be official.
And there was a 25th one, which we went out on Monday, because they're not in the district, okay? There was one parcel that said it had its own well, and it was built in 1935. And we went out on Monday. We went out because I got the report, I'm saying, well, wait a second, it says 24 and 25, and we have the exact amount. So when the house was built back in 1935, they actually put the well in the garage. So when any time anybody went out to the site, they said, they got to be taking the water from the district because they don't have a well. And so, bottom line, he's got a well. So
And
we were having,
It's on Highview, or where is that?
that's coming up, it's number 9,
First house on the right going up Birch Hill.
Oh, on Birch Hill, okay,
I think, is it first? Yeah.
interesting.
There's a road there. So bottom line, they have their own well. It's been proven, we went out there, and gentleman's very nice. I guess it was his uncle or something. He's from Puerto Rico, and he saw my plate at USMC thing. He's just, it was an adventure. But everything seemed to be going good. That report's going to come back to us, and we'll move on and get that done.
What's the next step after the district?
We have to verify, like we have, that these are the ones, and only the one parcel will be taken out and move forward. Anything else, Will, with that?
No, the public hearing is what's
Yeah.
being scheduled right now. And that'll give the opportunity for anybody that's in the district or that's in the proposed district to speak for or against. They can speak their mind if they want. And once that is closed, we adopt an order establishing the district, which is subject to permissive referendum because this is on our initiative rather than on a district-wide. It's not a self-created district. And to give you some history on this, this was a private water company that basically was abandoned by the estate of the owner to the town, and we sort of inherited all the problems.
Yeah.
And then the health department sort of ganged on by pointing out that there were these 6 other homes that were sharing a water source that in today's day and age you couldn't do. So they merged, they required us to merge the 2 systems. Back when Birch Hill Water Company was in effect, they were regulated by the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission got involved and were really acting as a blockade, if you will, and kept asking for more information. And finally, they realized that there really was nothing they could do. They were not regulating it anymore because it's not a private water company. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, that's the genesis of this. It's a relatively small water district, proposed water district, because of the number of units that are served. So, as it's turned out over time, With the detection of the PFOAs and whatnot, they're gonna have to spend some money. And hopefully that's all gonna be covered by grants. But we have to get this district properly formed before we can get the grants.
Thank you.
And to make this 100% official, there's numerous whereas clauses, and then ordered, which is similar to resolve, but it's ordered that the town board shall meet at Town Hall, 1360 Route 22, Brewster, New York, on the 27th day of July, 2023 at 7 p.m. for the purpose of conducting a public hearing on the proposal to establish said Birch Hill Highview Water District pursuant to Article 12A, the town law, with the improvements specified above, at which time and place all persons interested in the subject therefore may be heard concerning the same, and be further ordered that the town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish a copy of this order in the Putnam Press, the official town newspaper, and post a copy of the same on the signboard of the town in the time and manner required by law. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
And the final item on the agenda this evening, it's Mike Bird asked me today to put this on the agenda, an intermunicipal agreement to purchase highway equipment. Now therefore be resolved that resolution number 45 of May 25, 2020 is hereby rescinded, and be further resolved that the town highway superintendent is authorized to enter in an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Springwater to purchase a 2020 CV 515 plow truck for a price not to exceed $75,000. And be further resolved the town be purchased this vehicle with cash on hand and shall purchase with not required bond. Resolved this resolution shall take effect immediately. So move for discussion.
Second.
Okay, discussion. So back in May, we authorized Mike to go out, which is the highway superintendent, to go out and purchase a vehicle. And it was a 2015, and this is a 2020. Now, we lost the bid on the other one. We didn't win, but believe it or not, something even better came along, which is this.
Okay.
And this is a 2020, less miles, and we're getting it for the same price.
Sure.
So the last resolution was 75 as well?
Yeah, they were both 75, and tonight we rescinded that one because it's not going to take place.
Correct.
And this will replace it, and we gained 5 years and a lot of miles. And I have to thank Mike, he does a really good research in these items and saves us town
he
a
certainly
lot
does.
of money. So move for further discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Just come up to the mic, sir, and give your name if you would, please.
Yeah, hi, how you doing? My name's Kevin Murray. I'm with New York Citizens Audit, and I emailed you some documents regarding what the New York Citizens Audit found when they audited, excuse me, the 2020 general election. And I have, so right now what they're also doing is they're going to the towns and presenting a resolution to audit the 2022 general election, because since there was no corrective action made with the findings from the 2020 general election, New York Citizens Audit is now asking for an audit of the 2022 general election. So I have I have hard copies of all those same documents. If I can hand these out.
You can. The town board was
Thank you.
forwarded the information you had sent previously.
Oh, you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once the document comes in town hall, we have one gentleman not here. I'll take his and put it in his box.
Sure, great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You want to give one? Do you have a number to town clerk?
That's all right, I'll copy.
Oh, I just made up. Just for the board minutes.
Yeah, but she's the boss. She keeps the record.
Okay.
But we'll make a copy.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't feel left out.
So yeah, so I just so the ask is that if we could, I'm also here with Susan Cadu. She is the New York Citizens Audit Putnam County lead, and just the ask is that we could get on the agenda to present the resolution for the audit of the 2022 general election. So that's
Well, We'll forward it out, and if the board would want to entertain it, you'll forward it, well, we already sent this out.
I already sent, yeah, those are the hard copies of the same.
Because you're pretty much here, we know what that is. And,
Okay.
I'm not gonna say those are, good.
What does the resolution do for you? I mean, we didn't pass a resolution for you to do the last audit, so why do you need a resolution from towns?
So what New York Citizens Audit is doing is, we're going to the towns, we're going to all the towns in the state, is what we're doing. So we're specifically going to the towns because they're the representatives closest to the people. And so we're presenting the information to the towns, and then we're asking them to allow us to present it for a resolution to audit the 2022 election. So far, we have 17 towns throughout the state have adopted the resolution.
How many towns in the county?
There's 933 towns in the state of New York.
Okay.
You got
But
14?
All right, so we have a little bit of work to do.
I still,
Oh, it's 19? Okay, all right.
I still don't know what the resolution does for you, though.
So the resolution, what the resolution is we're requesting from the state a third-party audit of that 2022 general election to find out the true error rate of these, of the elections, and how do we correct for the discrepancies that we're finding in these elections from cycle to cycle.
Who paid for the 2020?
New York Citizens Audit did it themselves.
But this time you don't want to pay for it yourselves? Is that, I'm just trying to understand what's different.
So New York Citizens Audit, again, it's an all-volunteer 501c. It's a non-profit group. So how they did the audit in 2020 is they just requested through FOIL, through Freedom of Information law, they just requested all the information from the counties and from the state and what was publicly available. So they took all of that data, and actually this the whole thing. It's actually it was very providential because because of COVID, there was a lot of these data analysts and data scientists were out of work, so they volunteered their services to New York Citizens Audit. And then the data science team was able to break down all that information that came back from the state and from the counties, and they did it. So they did it. It was their own. So New York Citizens Audit did the audit using that information.
And this time you want New York State to pay for it. And
We want what we want is that we want a third party. It's let me see what the request is. So I have it here. Yeah. So so what we're asking for is a complete end-to-end audit of the New York State 2022 general election for both paper and electronic records, including ballots by a mutually agreed upon external third-party bonded auditing firm possessed of adequate insurance and indemnification for the handling and protection of the personal identifying information of millions of New York citizens in order to determine the true error rate. So we want a third-party audit is what we want. We don't want to,
But you want them to pay for it, the state. That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, we pay for everything else. So I mean.
Actually, we would be paying for it.
Anyhow, we would pay for it, so, right, So,
I'd like to donate my tax money to you.
yeah. So do you want to add anything?
I just have a couple things just to say.
So again, this is she's a New York Citizens Audit Putnam County team leader.
Yeah, you have the, in your packet, you'll have this summary form, but I'll just say a couple of the findings that this, again, all volunteer group that got together that found all of this information, which is pretty amazing information. For New York State, you get one State Board of Election ID number that travels with you. If you move to another county, you still have that one number. If you move out of state and you come back, you still get that one number. What they found is that there were 1.25 surplus New York State voter ID numbers assigned to calling them clones because there might be a slight variation in a name, a middle initial changed or a birth date changed, but anyone on this board or myself, we could have been cloned. I moved from one town to Putnam Valley, out of Westchester County up to Putnam, and I could have been cloned. I have not seen my records yet, but that move triggers the possibility of keeping the old record, tweaking it a bit, and giving it a new State Board of Election number, and me going on with my regular voting every year under the number that I have, not knowing that this voter roll, there's an algorithm that they detected in the voter rolls that allows somebody, and this is the really key thing, we don't know who the somebody is. Is it our government? Is it a foreign government? We don't believe New York State knows it exists, New York Board of Elections. We know the county Board of Elections do not know that it exists. A couple of the counties have been shown now, and it's a huge eye-opener for them. But this algorithm can be accessed by whoever put it in there, and it is an extremely expensive work of IT, I don't even know the term, I'm not a computer person, but is an extremely expensive algorithm that was put in, and I think there's actually 4 algorithms in New York State. Our head data researcher, Andrew Paquette, he just had an article published in May, I believe, either April or May of this year, in the peer-reviewed Journal of Information Warfare that now proves that our findings are fact. There is this algorithm. It has been proven. New York Citizens Audit brought a lot of this information to many state officials. I just can read you a few of who we have brought it to. When we first found out about this, which was, I think, in like spring or early summer of 2021, this information was taken to many people. I was given to state and federal officials, including Attorney General, Secretary of State, State Board of Elections, the Inspector General, the FBI, the state leadership of the Democrat and Republican parties, county election officials, sheriffs, district attorneys throughout New York State, and the New York State Police. Our head researcher and our director, Marley Hornick, had a meeting with the New York State Police that went on for 4 or 5 hours. And when they left there, the New York State Police were shocked. They even admitted, they said that this looks like treason, but it's out of our jurisdiction, so we can't do anything about it, but we will pass it on to the Foreign Information Task Force? Foreign Intelligence Task Force. And we have not heard anything about it at all since then. I don't know if it died on a desk somewhere, I don't know. Or if they're looking at it behind the scenes. We do know there are some investigations going on, but this information it's so overwhelmingly horrible. And as a citizen in the state, seeing what's happening to this beautiful state, we the people, and you guys are we the people. You hold an office, but you represent us, but you are us. So the purpose of New York Citizens Audit is to go, right now, is to go town to town to town throughout this. And you said, how many towns do we have to go to?
933 towns.
I'm shaking thinking about it. That's an overwhelming number, but we're going to do it. And we are only growing. We are only recruiting more citizens. And if anybody is interested in joining us and helping, it's Audit NY. It's like New York, but just NY. AuditNY.com. Please volunteer. Please donate. We need to, I believe if we can't get enough towns on board, the point is to get the towns on board, to put pressure on the counties. The counties are aware of us. They've all been, I personally delivered to Putnam County back in September. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. They don't want to get involved. And I'm sure you guys have been told about us or been warned that we might be coming and that our information is a little kooky. Well, it isn't. That we've disputed all of the claims against us, and everything we have has facts to back it up. Everything is based in facts. If you read the information we've given you or go on our site, there's lots of informational videos, tons of information, and it is all fact. But we need to save this nation. These algorithms, our director of research, Andrew Paquette, the one who had the article published, he has gone to other states to help them, and he has found similar, not identical, but similar algorithms in many other states in this country. Whoever has done this to us, that is taking control of our government from the inside out by controlling our elections, that is our civil right. That is, I mean, you take that away from us, we are no longer a democratic republic. We're just not. We're asking you, please, please help us with this, because so many of us have donated so many hours. I know personally for me, it's been a lot of dollars. I get all this information printed up. I know Kevin has too. We're traveling with, and there's nobody funding us. There's no money coming from anywhere but my checking and savings account for this. We're trying to raise money to do a lawsuit because we really think that that is the only way we're going to actually be able to stop this. But if we could stop it with the towns, because you guys can put pressure on the counties can then insist that the state does this audit. Any one of us can be audited at any time for any reason. Why does the New York State Board of Elections absolutely refuse to do this audit? What are they hiding that they don't want found? If they are completely convinced their information is 100% accurate, do an audit and prove it to us. But they can't, so they won't. If you've got children or grandchildren or want to have children, leave them a republic. Don't let them take control of our nation, and they've been doing it. You see what's been happening. We're really one election away from, well, I don't even want to think about what we're one election away from. I didn't really read from my script, but I think you got the gist. Does anybody have any questions for me or for Kevin?
I don't.
Not this time.
Okay, there's no, we've heard it, we read your information prior to this, and if, we'll talk amongst ourselves, okay? There's no need for an executive session, and if anyone wants to bring this forward from the board, it will come forward, and if not, then it will die here.
Just one last
Okay.
thing too, I'd like to say, so in that, when they did the audit in 2020, they found that over 40%, I think it was 42% of all races, so that's state and federal races, were uncertifiable. So and that's not even to say that the other 60% were free and clear, but the 40 or 42% which could not be certified just because of the ineligible votes that were in those races. So.
Yes, 95, this is
95,
from 2020
yeah,
general
races.
election, not 2022. But in the 2020 general election, 95 of our state and federal representatives cannot prove they won based on their margin of victory and the amount of, well, we can now, I believe, call it fraud because of our published article that has proved that these are facts, in that district where these selected officials were elected. 95 people are making laws at the federal and state level for us that we may not have put there. So please keep that in mind. On a personal note, why I'm here is I lost my job during COVID. And, this is the United States of America. The government is not supposed to be able to interfere with my honest ability to make a living. And they completely did. I've lost my career. So I've got time, I've got money, and I've got a chip on my shoulder. We're not going away. We're coming back. So please, we're asking that you vote yes, like a yay for our resolution, and we'll just keep coming back if you don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Town board? Okay, I'll entertain a
Oh, talk about the fireworks.
someone said something, I didn't hear it.
He said fireworks. You could take this, Ed.
We'll be hosting our annual fireworks extravaganza again. It'll be Sunday, July 2nd, once again on Independence Way, or, everybody refers it to the Home Depot and DeChico's parking lot. Officially, the event will begin at 7:30. We'll have a DJ and fireworks scheduled to go off at 9:30. So please join us if you can. Thank you.
Well done, Edwin. And I have a question for the town board. Where are we with the Veterans Banner Program?
Great question. For those of you who don't know, I talked about it a couple of town board meetings. We're rolling out a veteran banner program in town, as you've seen in other towns. We have 44 banners ordered at this point. 31 of them have come in. I displayed them at Memorial Day temporarily at the Morningthorpe Bridge. I'm still waiting on some permits. I got the NYSEG approval yesterday, waiting on DOT, and then we will start to hang them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Great work, Eric.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
That's all.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
How about a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
There you
All
go.
in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.